Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me in the locker room on this Thursday, April 13th. I'm Alan Locher. Actors Victoria Grace and Remington Hoffman from Days of Our Lives are here today to tell us what it is like playing brother and sister Li and Wei Shin on the daytime drama. Victoria is internationally well known for her performance capture and voiceover as Yara in the Naughty Dog Sony PlayStation hit The Last of Us Part 2. She has also been seen in primetime on Superstore, Modern Family, and Freeform's Famous in Love. In addition to his role as Wei, Remington also plays the character of Bryce in Tyler Perry's Zatima. His other television credits include Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Westworld, Animal Kingdom, and Station 19. He is the director of the critically acclaimed short film A Walk in West LA and a creator producer on the documentary series Talkin Success. It is my pleasure to welcome Victoria Grace and Remington Hoffman to the locker room. Hello there.
Hey.
Thank you both for being here. It's a pleasure to meet you both.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much
for
for
having
inviting
us.
us. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
You are so welcome. Well, there's a Days of Our Lives fan watching, and he had sent me a note earlier, but he also just wrote it on YouTube. And he says Days should do everything to keep these two on the show. Both have presence and are great. And although I want Remington's Lee to get back to being good, he is an Asian Cary Grant.
That's amazing.
What an amazing compliment. Oh my gosh, Cary Grant. That's probably going to go down as one of the greatest compliments of my entire life.
It's
gonna
so
remember
funny
that
because
forever.
I love when Lee is bad. Like
Yeah.
you know those characters when you just love to hate them? Like I feel like that's Lee for me. Like you do such a great job.
Thanks,
And I'm
Victoria.
sure,
Thank you.
actors, playing bad is much more fun than playing good.
It's funny because I didn't know that I was a bad guy until the audience started telling me I was a bad guy. So maybe that's why it's working, you know?
I
'Cause-
mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like I
totally
don't go
get that.
thinking like, oh, I'm a bad guy. I just, I read the script and then I think, okay, what's my intention? What am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
And
No, I totally get that because I feel like when you're playing the bad guy, well, first of all, every bad guy thinks that they're the good guy.
yeah, exactly.
Right? They always think that they're doing the right thing for the world, and all they want is love at the end of the day and acceptance usually. So yeah, I think you're right to not play the bad guy.
Yeah, it is
Right.
so true. I mean, there's an actor, Michael Zaslow, who's no longer with us, who played basically a villain for decades on Guiding Light, but never looked at himself. You have to play, and you think you're doing things from the bottom of your heart, but
Yes.
they may not always be. Well, before we dive in more to Days, I wanted to go back to your childhoods. Remington, you grew up in California, and Victoria, you in Maryland. Victoria, you go first. Tell me about your childhood.
Oh wow, okay, going all the way back.
Going all the way back.
I have 2 adoring parents and 4 older brothers and 1 older sister.
Wow.
So I'm the baby of a big family. Yeah, we live out in the suburbs in Maryland, out in the countryside, and it's very, very peaceful. It's very different from LA. It's very peaceful. It's a small town, so I'm a small town girl. I grew up with dogs, so I'm obsessed with dogs. I have a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. His name is Bryce. He's 9 now, so he's a bit of an old man.
Wow.
But yeah, my family has always been prioritizing like academics. So I'm the first one in my family to actually go out and be a performer. Like my mom, when she was younger, she was into ballet, and my brothers were into all sorts of things like theater and martial arts and stuff and sports growing up. But like professionally, I'm the only one who's a performer in the family. So yeah, and they've all been very, very supportive. So I'm grateful.
Well, that was going to be the next question.
Yeah.
Do you miss Maryland?
I do. I go back there about 3 times a year.
That's
Whenever
cool.
whenever I have time off, because I do still have family members living there, and it's definitely nice to see my dogs.
Nice.
Yeah.
And Remington, for you?
Well, I'm originally from Santa Cruz, California, and I grew up in what's called the SoCal Mountains. So I grew up in the redwoods because
Oh,
Santa
nice.
Cruz there's mountains right next to the ocean, and yeah, I have a younger brother, Forrest, and then it's my parents, and my parents had my brother and I later on in life. So my dad's turning 80 this year.
Oh,
So that's really wonderful. He's the oldest living Hoffman, male Hoffman, oldest living male Hoffman that we know of. So that's wonderful. And my parents they're still together. They still live up in Santa Cruz, and I don't go up there as often, even though it's only 6 hours away, which is funny. But my wife's Swedish, so we're planning a trip to Sweden sometime this year, and we only take so many trips a year. So it's wonderful to go to Santa Cruz, but going to Sweden and seeing her family and everything is going to be really wonderful too.
have
And
you been before?
I actually have. I have some friends from I went to Santa Monica College. I graduated from high school. I went and played Division III college basketball in upstate New York.
Yeah.
Wait.
And
I had no
yeah.
idea you went to Santa Monica College.
Yeah. So I went to a school called Cuca College my freshman year to play basketball, and my dad told me to take an acting class. So I took
which is a story I absolutely love. Like, where did that come from?
Well, when I was in my mid 20s and I, like a lot of my friends were really successful in business and stuff. And I had pursued a career because I went there to study business marketing with a concentration in entrepreneurship. And I fell in love with acting, and I was like, I'm going to be an actor now. And then I moved back to Santa Cruz for a year. I graduated from the junior college there. My brother and I moved to Santa Monica College, down to Santa Monica, went to Santa Monica College. But I remember in my mid 20s, I was like telling my dad that I felt like a little bit that I had let him down because I wasn't real successful as an actor. And a lot of my friends were making quite a bit of money in the corporate world. And my dad said, oh, well, I'd always rather have poor artist sons than rich business sons. And so I think that's kind of a good example of who my dad is, and probably why he told me to get into acting. And he just kind of lives through his heart a lot. And so I think that he just told me that right as I was like almost getting on the plane. He's like, hey, you should take an acting class when you're away at school. So
did he ever, or did he ever maybe
No.
in the back of his mind wanted to be an actor?
No. He's a great actor. I actually made a short film in my early 20s, and I cast him as a homeless man in my short film. He's a fantastic actor. He's like, I always, as soon as I cast him in that short film and we were shooting it and I was watching him, I was like, oh man, if I can ever be as good as my dad, then I'll do all right. He's a great actor. But no, he doesn't want to be an actor or anything like that. He found his way to Hollywood in his early 20s. And he has a really long, crazy story, but yeah, he was asked to kind of like come out to the studios and stuff like that. And he was like, no, I'm good. I'm going to go my own way, do my own thing. He's an antique dealer. So he deals in antiques and fine art.
Yeah. I mean, I really loved when I read that he, suggested that.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel really fortunate. My dad's guidance and my dad's love for me has been really like a guiding force in my life.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful. Victoria, you started at age 6.
Yes.
What prompted?
I didn't know that. That's cool.
I was tiny. So basically a crew from a show called America's Most Pampered Pets came over to film my dogs.
That's awesome.
Yeah, came over to film my dogs. And my mom asked the producers, my mom always realized that I had a very exuberant personality and that I would be great for performing. And so she asked the producers, like, hey, how would she maybe start acting? And, they recommended acting classes in the area. And that's basically how it all began. I mean, my mom realized that I would be good here.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing for sure, you both definitely supportive parents.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's really, the first step.
Yeah.
It is.
It's really helpful. Yeah. I know some actor friends of mine, I'm sure you do too, Victoria, that have kind of made it without any support at all. And I always really admire them because, just having your parents in your back corner or a relationship or anything, having someone there that believes in you and helps you, that's so big in anything, anyone who's pursuing their passion, I think.
Absolutely. Your dad in antiques, hopefully his parent, 100%. That support is not something any of us should take for granted, for sure. Remington, take us back. You first auditioned and appeared as Li for the Days App miniseries Chad and Abby in Paris back in 2020.
Yeah.
I heard you also say that you had been auditioning, I think, for 7 years.
Yeah, for Marnie.
This show.
Yeah.
Wow.
I well, you know, I had let's see, that was because I actually shot that. It aired in 2020, but I shot it in 2019, and I had got the ABC showcase. So I was doing the ABC diversity showcase at the same time, and I was really fortunate to book Li on the they go to Paris, and it was an offshoot of the network show. And then they brought me over to the mothership, which is what people call it, which is really cool. And I was super fortunate for that. But I had, you know, my story with Marnie, at least in auditioning, is I went in for her one time and I was a little bit sick, and I just bombed so bad. I actually was auditioning for Christopher Sean's character, Paul Naritu. And I know Christopher Sean. I knew him when he booked the Days of Our Lives the first time, and I didn't know the character wasn't named Paul yet. It was just a baseball player basically. And I went in and I just remember bombing and just thinking, well, that's one casting office I'm never going to go in again. And I had probably auditioned for like 3 years before that or something, and then this was a couple years later, and then, you know, I didn't hear anything, and I was like, well, because when you bomb an audition as an actor, you think you're never getting called in for that casting office again. Usually, probably your bombing is not as bad as you think it is as the performer. But yeah, and I think I was auditioning for, I think the first time I auditioned for was at least 7 years before I booked Li Shin. Yeah.
Wow.
And a lot of casting offices I've known are like that. Like I definitely have known a lot of casting directors years and years and years before booking anything on any of their shows or movies.
Crazy. You mentioned the ABC diversity. Tell us what that is.
So ABC, along with other networks, but ABC is very has a very historic alumni, including like Chadwick Boseman, Gina from Jane the Virgin, a lot of
Gina Rodriguez.
Yes, exactly. Rodriguez. Thank you. Yeah. I met her in person one time, so I call her by her first name, but I didn't remember her last name just now. But yeah, so it's a long list of big alumni, and basically what they've been doing for years is, before diversity was being pushed so heavily like it is now, which is wonderful. I think the networks were doing big diversity showcases where they would bring in people of different ethnicities or sexual orientations or people with disabilities. And they would pick, for example, in my class, there was, I think 12 of us from LA, 12 from New York. And they bring you in, you go to ABC every single day. It's the same actually building that, or it's right across from where Marnie does the casting for Days of Our Lives, because they're all they're like adjacent to each other in Burbank. And and basically if you're chosen, there's like 15,000 people that audition every year across the country or something like that. And if you're chosen, then it's like about 2 months, they give you free training, and then they have you meet all the executives at ABC. And then you read all of these scripts in front of the executives because they're being written by new writers. So they pick new diverse writers talking about diverse topics with a diverse cast. And they've been doing it for a long time, for over a decade. And then eventually you do a big show. So you do a live theatrical performance with another person in front of agents and casting directors and producers. And ABC invites everyone that they know, managers, agents, a lot of people who aren't represented get representation through that. It's a really intense and very cool process. I loved it.
What a great opportunity for you.
I loved it. I was super fortunate to be part of that.
Yeah, I love that. That's really incredible. And Victoria, you first auditioned for Beyond Salem Chapter 2. What do you remember about your audition?
Right. So I, like Remington, it was a false name. So I had no idea who I was really auditioning for. But I think I sent in my tape in something like February, and I didn't hear anything at all. And then like late, I didn't hear anything at all. So I thought, when you just move on from an audition, because you're like, oh, okay, on to the next, you can't dwell on it. So I think a month and a half later, I got a call from my agent and manager, and I was like, why are they both on the phone? This is a little nerve-wracking. What are they going to say to me? And they told me that I booked it. And I had never met Marnie or any of the writers or producers or directors. I'd never met anyone on the show. So after I knew that I booked it, Marnie actually called me personally. And she gave me the rundown on how everything works, which was really nice of her. She didn't have to do that. But she was the first one to welcome me into the family. And she's really great. I love her.
So you booked it off one tape?
I booked it off one tape, yeah.
You didn't do like a Zoom call or producer read or any of that stuff?
No.
Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. That's what every actor wants. Every actor now after COVID just wants to send in a tape and then just get a call and be like, hey, you booked it.
It was so surprising. It was definitely.
Do you both like doing it that way yourself? You know,
I like it. Yeah. What do you think, Victoria?
I miss being in the room so much because getting to I don't know about you, Remington, but like with me, I love being able to interact with the casting director there because I feel like if I'm doing that, I have a better chance at impressing them. So yeah, I definitely feed off the casting director's energy.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody's, different how they, some people just like the fact that they don't have to get out of their house.
True.
Totally. I think what's cool about sending it in with the self-tapes now is that it's like I told my manager, it's like if you were to go and you're a woodworker and someone's like, hey, make a table, and then you show up in this room and then they have their own tools and their own wood, and then you got to kind of make this table in front of them really quick, or you kind of like make the table at your house and then you send it in and be like, hey, this is like my version of the table. What do you think of it? And I enjoy that aspect of it. But also to add on to what you're saying, Victoria, I think that the best thing is to send a tape in and then you go in and you actually meet someone in person. Because then you for an actor, confidence is so important. So then you feel confident. You're like, oh, they saw my work. They liked it. They want to meet me. But then there's also that heightened, like, I'm going to show up for game time, which I think isn't so much in your
game is on.
Yeah, in your office or in your spare room or wherever you're taping your stuff. It doesn't feel that pressure, which I think is good.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's also hard, like in the midst of COVID, doing these Zoom callbacks.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of actors, or at least I've heard, like it hinders their process, like having to be confined in the Zoom box,
Mm-hmm.
Right. When you're in a room, you have the room.
Exactly. You have the room.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have full control.
Right now, you have this little box that we're in right now.
It's like, whoa!
Yeah. You have to make it work in this confined.
Yes, exactly.
I get that. And I'm not an actor, and I get that. Victoria, I heard this story. Your sister, when she heard you were cast, asked you a question. Can you repeat that for the audience?
Ask me a question.
You're playing whose sister?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah. I was going to ask when you asked that question, I was like, oh, I was all, yeah.
Yeah. So basically my sister was in the exact room when I got the call from my agents and managers, and she was overhearing a little bit of the conversation, what she could, but I whispered to her, I was like, guess what? I booked a series regular role. And this was my first series regular role ever. So it was very, very exciting. And she called up my mom on her phone while I was on the phone, and she was telling my mom all of the details while I was relaying messages via whispers. I got off the phone with Marnie then, and she had explained to me, oh, you're going to be playing the little sister of Remington Hoffman. His character is already pretty well defined on the show. And so I got off of that call. I was like, oh yeah, she said I'm playing the little sister of Remington Hoffman. My sister goes, what? That's my client. That's my voiceover client.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's a voiceover agent and a commercial and print agent over at DDO Artist Agency. And she was so thrilled to hear that I was going to be acting with Remington. She was like, oh my goodness, that's so funny. I have to go tell Julie, her partner Julie, at the agency.
Small world. World.
How did you find that out, Alan? How did you know this?
I read it online somewhere.
Oh, amazing. Cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know
yeah.
that anyone knew that or wrote about
Yeah,
that. We
Victoria
talked about
shared
that
it
when we
with
first met.
somebody.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
the
yeah.
first time I was on set, I had looked up pictures of Remington beforehand. So I was like, okay, this is the guy. I'm gonna say hi to him. I walked into set. I saw you, Remington, and I was like, guess who we have in common? My sister is your voiceover agent. It was so funny.
It's so amazing and small world and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
shocking, you know?
Yeah.
It totally is. I meant to say this earlier, Remington, when you mentioned your brother's name, Forrest. I love your name and your brother's name. Are you both named after anybody?
Well, Forrest is named after the redwoods in Santa Cruz, because he wasn't named for like 3 weeks, I think, or something like that. And then again, my dad, he was just kind of standing out on the porch, and he's all, well, why don't we just name him Forrest? So that's how he got his name. And then since my dad's an antique dealer, he actually he used to have, but he sold them all. But they're like a very old antique gun collection. So he had like old Winchesters and Remingtons. So I'm named after Remington Arms Corporation. Not that my family is like all about guns, but it's like it's these old, really beautiful parts of American history, really. And so it was either Winchester or Remington. So he went with Remington, and yeah.
I love that. Well, last year, Marnie, the casting director, and Albert Alar told you that they were expanding Lee's role on the mothership. How did that? What do you remember about that conversation?
Oh, well, I was called later in the day, so I went to the driving range to go hit golf balls, and I was hitting golf balls when I was driving over to Whole Foods to get a smoothie before I showed up on set, and I got a call and it was like, hey, Albert wants to see you in his office, and I was like, oh man, I was like, the ride is over, it's done. You know? This is it. And I was like, well, I'm gonna get my smoothie then. If I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna be drinking my whatever coconut green smoothie from Whole Foods. So I got my smoothie. I was at Whole Foods, got my smoothie, went over there, and I went upstairs. And he's all, hey, so we're gonna make the like the relationship with Gabby and Stefan and Lee a big point in the series, and I wanted to let you know that. So it was the exact opposite of what I thought, and it was great news. And yeah, he actually had me. I worked with Marnie on some like upcoming scenes and stuff like that, because they were like, hey, sometimes we do this. Actually, Marnie used to do it a lot with a lot of actors. She would watch their like live performance, and then she would talk to them about it, and then they would like tweak the character and see if they liked the character being this way or that way. So it was super cool. Marnie worked with me. I was like doing tapes of myself and my scenes, sending them to her, and she's like, oh, what if we do this? Or like, oh, I really like that. Keep playing into that. Yeah, so we kind of like upped the stakes, and then they supported me in taking it more seriously. Even though Victoria knows I take it pretty seriously. But you know, anyone believing in you, it's a huge compliment. So I was psyched up. Yeah. But right after golfing and in between getting my smoothie, I was like, oh,
your pits were a little wet.
Yeah, I was a little moist.
You were sweating. You were sweating a little. I can understand those phone calls until you know it's on the good side can be very nerve-wracking, no matter what profession, right?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Victoria, he just referenced that he takes it seriously. How so?
Oh my goodness!
How would you describe it?
First of all, like I really respect an actor who likes to, you know, who's really super focused and works hard and stays in character. And Remington is so good at that. Like sometimes I'll see him in the hallway and he'll walk straight past me because he's just so into it. And sometimes, you know, like people I'm working with, like Lucas Adams, whenever I'm working with him, we're joking all the time on set. Like we can't stop laughing. And with Remington, he's already so into the scene. I like crack a joke and he goes, oh, yeah, that's funny. He doesn't laugh. He's just so in it all the time because he's obviously like, you're obviously passionate about it and you're obviously focused. So yeah, that's what I mean. That's what we mean by serious. It's kind of like an inside joke now.
I love that. Well, Tony just said, I wish they would add Remington's sense of humor to his character. He's very funny.
Oh, thank you, Tony. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. There was a couple scenes that they wrote. There was like 2 scenes that were comedic last year. There was the Thanksgiving episode. That was a comedic scene. And I'm supposed to be bummed that there isn't any pie. And when I read it, I was like, oh, I was like, it's funny. I was like, okay, cool. Not so much just like, I'm gonna get Stefan. I'm gonna get Stefan. Yeah.
How was it when you found out that you were moving? I love the name that you both said, the mothership.
Mm.
Coming from beyond Salem, and you coming from the app. When you first found out you were going over to the network show, that's got to be an exciting.
Mine happened really fast. When I did the audition, they said it might go to the network, but I wasn't getting my hopes up, and so I was just showing up and doing my job one day at a time. And then I think it was within like 2 weeks of shooting or 3 weeks of shooting, went to the mothership. And honestly, I just took it as a really big compliment, because I figured if I totally bombed the app, then they wouldn't invite me again. so I was like, I must have done, well enough for them to invite me back. And
Step in the right direction.
I love being on Days of Our Lives. Victoria knows, all of us. It's like, it's one of the best, if not the best actor job to have. Everyone's super kind. You shoot really intensely. It's like the whole thing is just such an incredible thing to be part of. I'm super, super grateful. Yeah.
You both don't come from soap world, and I don't think, were you soap fans before?
I was not.
I wasn't either.
But my family, so my grandfather was actually at the time high up at Hearst. So he was very familiar with, Soap Opera Digest and all that. He that was his magazine. Like, he was the one, helping to distribute that.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh, that's cool.
Yeah. So he was well versed in soap operas. And then my mom, growing up, she was a huge fan of All My Children. And so she's always talked about that. So I never actually had the opportunity to get into soaps because I was working from a very young age. I never had the time to watch TV during the day with working and school. But yeah, I knew little tidbits of stuff.
So because I worked on As the World Turns and Guiding Light for 13 years, but my shows went off in 2009 and 10, and we were doing things fast at that time. But I know how things have even, gone faster in 2023. So was, learning that pace, was it, surprising, and, did you find it challenging? Because it is a fast pace.
I mean, yeah, I think it's pretty fast, just, in general, before the changes of this year. I was very lucky because I actually got into Beyond Salem 2 first. And so that helped me transition into everything else, because even like Beyond Salem, we were able to take multiple takes. We were able to take our time.
Mm-hmm.
But then transitioning to Days of Our Lives, it's the take. And, I'm really grateful because I was able to mentally prepare myself at that point. But yes, it was extreme. It's an intense process. And then, going into 2023, everything is faster. Touch-ups are faster. Wardrobe is faster. Lighting.
Must be exciting, though. It must, because it must feel like theater, and challenging.
It definitely keeps you on your toes.
Yeah,
for sure. And I think, every actor should be able to develop that skill.
Yeah, Alan, I think you said it perfectly. Like theater, because I've thought about that a lot, being on Days of Our Lives, feeling like it's like a theater troupe, a little different, because theater, you rehearse for a while and then you put up the show. But it feels, even though it's not live, there's a live feeling component to it, because as you're shooting it, you'll see the little red light go on the camera. And then you'll know, like, that's the camera that's on television. That's the camera that's on television. And so they're kind of, I don't think they're doing the final edit, but they're doing a pre-edit while we're shooting. And so, like Victoria said, now we just go to hair and makeup. It's very fast. Ever since COVID, it's much faster for protocols. And then now we go right on the set. We do one kind of walk through we do a rehearsal kind of just for the cameras. But if we're not moving, sometimes we don't rehearse. Sometimes we just go and shoot it, and then we do one take, and then we move on to the next scene. And so if in an episode there's 5 scenes inside of this bedroom, then you just go like the first scene, second scene, third scene, fourth scene, fifth scene, done. And I love it. I love shooting soap opera. It's so great. And shooting with Mr. Perry, with Tyler Perry, he does the same thing, but it's just on location. And so he shoots.
Yeah, I heard that. I forgot who I spoke to. I had heard, or maybe watching somebody else's interview somewhere. I
was more fortunate going on to his show because I had been doing Days of Our Lives first, that it didn't seem real fast. You know, because my agents are like, he shoots really fast. And I showed up and I was
he's
like,
slow.
Yeah, I was like, well, this isn't, you know, it's different, but it's not faster.
It's a completely different experience because like I have a background in like sitcom comedies on like network television. And those shows are really slow in comparison. So it is a completely different sort of world, and it's a lot of fun. I agree with Remington. It's a lot of fun.
You really hone your skill here because you really have to make choices. You have to learn. I mean, learning lines as quickly. If you've got a couple days in a row, you toss those lines out and get the next batch in for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it's happened for you, Victoria, but I've had scenes start where right before we do the take, we did the rehearsal and I knew the line in the rehearsal and we're about to do the take and I'm so overloaded with words, but I'm like, man, I really don't know what I'm about to say. And it's funny how it's in there. It's in there. It just kind of comes out. You know?
Especially when we have to do multiple episodes and it's like boom, 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 boom. I've had that multiple episodes back to back in a day.
Yeah. And you're starting a scene, you're like, I totally forget.
I forget where I even am. Like, yeah, exactly.
I love that. So for anybody who might be watching and who doesn't know who you play, describe your characters. Victoria, if you want to go first.
Oh, okay. So I play Wendy Shin. She grew up as a tomboy, so she's really badass. You know, we come from a traditional patriarchal family. Yes. And so the way I picture it is every time, you know, I do something great, Remington does something, or Remington as Li, you know, he does something sort of great and my father gives him the credit. You know, he always overlooks me because I'm the girl. And while he has been hard on Li as well, because Li is the family heir, right? He sort of throws me away to like, oh, you know, you're the girl, you should marry into a wealthy family and then you'll be taking care of the rest of your life. And so Wendy, her life has been a constant fight of trying to prove to her father and her brother that she is every bit as capable as they are. She can do things on her own, and she's smart and intelligent. She becomes head of IT at Demera. But yeah, you know, she feels like she's never given credit where credit's due. Mm-hmm. So I would say she's a total badass, you know, strong woman on the show, which I really appreciate. I love, love, love playing strong female characters.
Well, and I'm sure there's plenty of women watching who can relate to being treated that way by their parents or, you know.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Absolutely. And also I would say, to add on to your character, Wendy, my character is Li Shin on the show, and I'm the son of Wei Shin. And I was the newest board member to the Demera Enterprises when I first came on the show. And I would say that Wendy, she opens the door for love with Li, I think, more than with Li. Li's really closed off because although, and it's so true, like you were saying from your character's perspective, you know, Li's a little bit higher up on the totem pole because there is this very patriarchal vertical relationship in their family. Li always feels like he never can do anything good enough for his father. And that he's the son of a billionaire. He's been put into this high level position. He really wants to show up and do a great job. He's kind of doing it all from these very selfish, not like heart driven places. And I think Wendy actually tries to open his heart up as their relationship grows and as they get closer in Salem, because Wendy was living in the North, Alaska or Seattle? Alaska, yeah. Right? Yeah. She was like banished to Alaska and then she came down to Salem. And yeah, and then Li falls in love with Camila or Gabby Hernandez, and he has a hard time being in love because he doesn't really know what love is. He's just caught up on all of his narcissism as well, but he has true deep feelings for her, and then that drives him to kind of destroy his entire business relationship with Demera, and eventually Camila, because of his jealousy. He's very although he's born a billionaire, he's extremely insecure and has a lot of fear about losing the things that he cares about. And then he also wants to win, and Gabby is so unwinnable that it's just this perfect dynamic between the two of them and their fiery relationship. And I'm so happy to play Li Shin. I think it's a cool character. I think
you could see it.
It's very powerful, dynamic.
Yeah. It's coming through.
Thank you.
You mentioned Camilla. I had her on a few months back. Talk about working with her, but also the legendary Joseph Mascola.
Oh, yeah. So, well, sorry, Joseph Mascola. Brandon.
Did I get it wrong? I might have gotten it wrong.
The Stefan Demera?
Yes, Stefan.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So Camila has been great to work with because she's a seasoned soap pro, like right off the bat. And one thing I learned from Camila is that I would go into rehearsals and I'd be like, all right, like this is kind of how I'm going to do it, And I'd be there like leaning on our dressing room door and I'd be like, blah, 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 like saying this stuff. And she'd be like going like this and being like, but Lee, like you didn't tell me to show up at Demera. And I was like, what the heck is this person doing, And then she would start salsa dancing and she would start bouncing around and stuff. And then one day we were rehearsing or something, and she's super cool because she likes to rehearse, and I like to rehearse too. And Victoria knows I like to do scenes 3 times so I can work on it before we go up. And I was like, what are you doing, Camila? Because eventually I started mirroring her, because I was like, she's not paying attention to me. She's like in her own world. I gotta like get her in on this scene. And so she was like, yeah, I don't like to get in a rhythm. She's like, I don't want to be in any rhythm. She's like, I wanted to have no rhythm. I want to just let it fly. And then the way she does it when she acts is totally different than the way she's rehearsed, which is super helpful if I can be like on my game and actually connecting with her and trying to go back and forth, because then things happen that I don't know are going to happen. And that's the greatest gift you can give to another actor, is doing something like that they don't expect. And so, yeah, that's what it's like working with Camila. And she's just really
I wish somebody had a videotape on like that moment where she's going like this and you're like, what is she doing?
No, because I'm super cool as a cucumber, like being super dark and leaning against the wall, almost like hiding because I don't want to talk to her, and because my character doesn't want to talk to her or whatever. And then she's in there doing salsa dancing and doing her makeup at the same time. So that's really fun. And then Brandon, who plays Stefan, yeah, he's really hardcore. When he first came on the show, he would write the entire episode out. Not even just his scenes, the entire episode, he would write it. And then he would write in all the beats of everything that was happening in the entire episode. And so what I took from him the most is like all of the writing, like all the homework. He writes a ton and a ton and a ton and a ton. Like on his iPad, you can see it next to his script, all the beats, all the things Stefan could do or might do because he doesn't want to make a decision, but it's just like in the objectives. And and we all both love Scotch. Brandon and I both love Scotch. So in our downtime, we love talking. He loves talking to me about Scotch. I learned from him. He went to Scotland. He's very into it. And so that's something cool to connect on.
That's so funny. Yeah. And Wendy, you were dating a few men when you came on the show. Carson Hoffman,
that was great.
Lucas Adams and Tanner Stein. Talk about working with those 3.
Oh my goodness, they are such a hoot. I didn't realize, but like coming onto the show, Tanner told me, well, first of all, Tanner and I, we started at the same exact time. So Marnie, she gave us each other's phone numbers, and she was like, maybe you two can connect and bond over this first time experience. You know, being a newbie going into such like a show that has, such a legendary cast already. You can expect maybe clicks or something, at least in other sets. Like that's what I've experienced, very cliquish people. Here, we had no problem with that. Everyone is super welcoming, but it was a nice idea for Marnie to suggest that. And so we were FaceTiming, and I said, I told him like, yeah, I'm going to be working with Carson Boatman a lot. And he was like, oh my God, that is literally my best friend from Ohio.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, they grew up in Ohio together.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're really great. And Lucas, I've been doing a lot of scenes with Lucas lately, and he is like, he's such a normal, sweet Southern gentleman.
Yep.
Who's like very in love with his wife and just, you know, very, very kind. So yeah, I adore all three of them. They're great.
Love that.
I loved that scene when I first see that you're with two guys, and I'm like, nice.
Oh my God. It's so funny.
My sister
so
showing
funny.
up to the banquet with two guys. So
like
good.
I go home and everyone's like, hey, so you know, what's the update on your character on the show? And I'm like, oh, I have 3 boyfriends. Like, not a big deal.
Not a big deal. Not a big deal. That is so funny.
We all
I always thought that was super cool that they wrote that in your character. I always thought that was great. Just,
I think it's
from
so
Beyond
cool
Salem,
because
I thought that was
like
great.
I was still a tomboy at the time when all that was going on. And normally you don't see that on television, but also in real life. Like, you know, and Wendy, she's actually very inexperienced when it comes to love, even though she's very successful when it comes to work and all these other things. I think being a tomboy kind of held her back in a way because there weren't really any men who loved her for who she was versus like getting past her physical appearance, you know? So yeah, I think it's amazing that you have these 3 guys going after her.
Mm-hmm. It's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I apologize about Joe Muscola. I know he, you know, had played that character.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I just wanted to clarify because I was like,
and I'm glad
shoot, I don't know who this person
Brandon,
is.
because I was very excited for days when I heard about the 2-year renewal on Peacock.
Yeah,
what was that like for all of you? I mean, it must have been an exciting time to hear that.
Absolutely.
You can answer first, Victoria.
Okay. Yeah, I was fortunate to be there on set when they were going to announce it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was a big, huge toast. Everyone there, everyone in the crew was there. All of our wonderful directors and executive producers, and even a representative from Peacock was there. And he went up and said a speech, and he said that, you know, Days of Our Lives has one of the most resilient casting crews that he's ever worked with, which I thought was a huge compliment because it is true, you know, after almost 60 years, of course, you're going to go through trials and tribulations, but they've pushed through. Like 60 years, that is absolutely unheard of, you know? And so I was so thrilled to hear that we're going to be on for 2 more years, of course. And so happy for my Days family. I mean, they put in so much effort, so much passion, and everyone here is really driven because they love what they do. So, and that's amazing that they can get rewarded like that.
Well, the fans must be tuning into Peacock, so that's, you know, thank God for them.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
We adore our fans.
Thank God for them, right? It really, it's crazy. With this show, I do a sub-series called Conversations with Alan, dealing with the rise of hate, racism, and anti-Semitism, because I am the child of 2 Holocaust survivors. So,
wow.
You know, I'm curious, you know, with all of the anti-Asian hate that was coming, were there periods in your life that you experienced any of that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, growing up in Santa Cruz in the 90s. Yeah, for sure.
Really?
I mean, you know, it's like I grew up around a bunch of Caucasian surfers, you know, and the surfing culture is not welcoming to outsiders at all, like whether you're on Hawaii or whether you're in Santa Cruz or anything like that. So yeah, the first times I was experiencing very direct racism was because people thought that I wasn't from Santa Cruz when I was surfing. Because the only Asian people that lived around there were in the valley. So it was it was definitely aggressive and violent towards my brother and I. but that's you know, that's okay. It toughens you up. And
Well, it's partially education. You know, it's like
yeah,
you need to educate people. Um, right? I mean, like to think
yeah,
that you can't be living in Santa Cruz, like you could be living anywhere. We
yeah,
live among, you know, everybody, we live among each other.
Right.
100%. Yeah,
Victoria,
my grandma's had a house on the east side on the point of Santa Cruz. I mean, probably longer than, you know, those kids, or and they weren't even kids. I was 17. These guys are like 40-year-old men. Like I was
Oh
like,
my
they were
goodness.
like grown men, you know, for sure. 16. My brother was 14, 15. I was in high school. But I was thinking, oh yeah, you know, my grandma's lived here probably just as long as your folks, you know, or longer. And that doesn't even really matter, you know. We should just all like be respectful to each other, I think. And then also our industry, like our industry for sure. When I first moved here, it is like you know, it is what it is, but there wasn't very many characters written for me when I first came to LA in 2008. There wasn't very many kind of leading male Asian roles,
for sure.
You know, and so that was facing some level of adversity. But I always think of anything about the racism, prejudice, in general, I always feel like it makes people stronger in the long run, you know. And I always looked up a lot to the African American community growing up because I was Asian in Santa Cruz playing basketball with you know, primarily African American guys over in the city. I would drive over the hill into the city and play basketball. And I always looked up to the African American community that like I always felt like through the adversity that they faced, they became so much like stronger and influential in American society and history. And so growing up as a kid, I was like, oh, well, through like adversity, we grow the most, we become our biggest self. So that's kind of how I look at it. I definitely don't think we should have a victim competition. Yeah. You
No,
know,
but that is a great way to look at it. I mean, I'm Jewish and I'm gay, and currently people don't like both of those things.
I love both those things
I
though.
know, but
So
there's a lot,
it's just,
you know,
you know,
sadly, there's a lot of, you know, things happening in the world against those groups right now. It's just unfortunate. Like I said, but I love the strength part. And you're right. It probably has made me stronger and, you know, more resilient.
look at the
Victoria,
Jewish
for
community
you,
in America, Jewish history in America. I mean, the Jewish community is responsible for the big American flags, the creation of what we see now is when we believe the American parade. That's what my father told me. I haven't done an immense amount of research, but I believe that's true. And I mean, look, you know, all the way back to Egypt, you know, banished for 40 years in the desert. Like that's adversity, you know. Like it's a life. And back then, 40 years, you know, you'd be like an old man with grandchildren, you know. Yeah, it's I mean, my dad loves the Jewish community because he's an antique dealer, and so yeah, I pretty much grew up with all older Jewish men. Were like when I was around my dad, that's who I was hanging out with, older Jewish men.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love
and gay
that.
men, because there's a lot of gay men in the antique business.
Yeah, I would
And
assume.
yeah, you know,
I would
so
assume that. Yeah.
it's funny when you said that about your experience, because I was like, oh, those are like the two trusted groups that I really enjoy being around. You know,
I just mean, you know,
from my childhood.
sadly, right now, you know, the rise of anti-Semitism, the rise, you know, last year on anti-Asian hate was ridiculous, you know, and now, you know, a lot of the states trying to block drag queens from performing and you know, education and teachers who might be gay who can't talk about their husband or their wives. You know, I mean, it's insane. It really. Victoria, did you experience any of that growing up?
Growing up, not really. My dad, when he had options, you know, when he was finding a place to settle down and take work for the family, he had a few options of where we could possibly live. One was Atlanta, Georgia, and my mom was like, you know, my sister and I weren't around yet, but my mom said we are going to have Asian daughters. come in from South Korea. Like, we can't be in a place where it isn't diverse. So that's why we ended up settling down in Maryland, because even though we're out in the countryside, it is a very diverse area. More so, I got hate for being adopted growing up. You know, kids, they don't know any better, and they would always ask me, like, why do you look so different from your family? Things like that. And then I had one kid, I remember very clearly, he was like, well, at least I wasn't adopted because my parents don't love me. You know, comments like that. I did get but you know, I'm proud of being adopted. I love my family. I never cared that I was adopted. Like, I didn't even think that I was Asian. Like, I thought I looked like my family members. You know, it really didn't affect me.
I think it's very important that your family made you very well aware that you were adopted.
Yes. Forever.
Yes. And knowing that a family wants you, loves you, takes you in, and you know, that again, it's lack of education that people would you know, make fun of that in any way. And you know, the reason I brought all of this, you know, my conversation with Alan's here is because, you know, representation matters, and here you two are creating an Asian family on Days of Our Lives is incredible.
Thank you so much.
You know, and I think so important that we, all of us, you know, people ask me when I knew I was gay, and because I am 56 and grew up in the 80s, I don't have a moment because I didn't see myself. So I didn't know that, you know, if later on when I was watching the soaps I worked on, they had a gay character here and there, but very, you know, you didn't see, if you don't see yourself, you can't articulate it to other people.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I told Remington before, like, I looked at the Hollywood Diversity Report, and I saw that out of all the leads on television, less than 4% are Asian. And, you know, the industry is now better than it has ever been, but we still have a long way to go. And I'm so proud that Days of Our Lives is taking that step forward towards proper representation.
Yeah. They were also doing it before it was as trendy too. You know, when I was first cast, it wasn't this, like, I was in a diversity showcase, and now ABC doesn't call it a diversity showcase anymore. I think they just call it a showcase because diversity was pushed so greatly during 2020. And so I appreciate that they were already, you know, when they cast me, I feel like, or when they casted Christopher Sean as Paul, they were already taking steps forward before other shows were, and networks and things. I think that's really, really cool. And I have a lot of respect for them for doing that.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. And it's creating a family. Ming-Na Wen was on As the World Turns when I grew up watching. And she was part of you know, she was the daughter of one of the white male characters. But, you know, it wasn't building an Asian family. She, you know, he had an affair with during, I think, the Vietnam War or something like that. I can't remember, you know, but it was representation back when she was there, and that was a long time ago. So
I know that being a child actor and coming to LA when I was really young, you know, there were so many auditions that they wanted to put together families, and I was almost never casted because they didn't want an Asian family. Or even if I was in consideration, they couldn't find Asian family members that they liked enough to cast with me. It was a very frustrating process. So I totally get what you're saying about Asian families. I'm so glad to finally be like part of an Asian family on a TV show, because I've never had that before.
That's awesome. As actors, and Victoria, you just said, reading that report, so seeing the Academy Awards this year, did that, you know, it has to have a effect on not only as Asian Americans, but also as actors to see a film and all of that cast recognized in your industry. Must have been a really amazing feeling.
Oh, for sure. I think I read that Michelle Yeoh was like only the second Asian woman to ever win an Oscar, ever, which is just so ridiculous to me. Like, I can't even wrap my head around it. You know, there have been tons of Asian actresses, talented Asian actresses in this industry, you know, throughout the years. And I was so incredibly happy that she won Best Actress. But like, it was a huge success for everyone across the board. I mean, they really swept the award season.
They did. They did.
And you know, they all took it with great stride. Like, it, you know, this was a long time coming. This was a long time coming. So I was extremely, you know, this is a time to be extremely proud as to be an Asian.
Yeah, good. Remington, tell me about Bryce and working on Tyler's show, Zatima.
Oh, yeah. Well, Bryce is, as they're finding out, I'm actually going to post a little teaser right after we're done here to my Instagram. But Bryce is confused about his sexual orientation, I think, a little bit, and confused about who he is, and confused about love. And so in the first season of Zatima, he's with Angela, who's an African-American woman on the show, played by Nzinga. And he falls in love with Zach, the lead. And he is having feelings towards Zach. And he doesn't really fully understand, I think, his own feelings. He's also not gay. He's not straight. He's trying to find his way to his true self. And I think that's cool that Mr. Perry wrote that into his show. I think it's very progressive again. And casting me in the show. I love being on the show. I'm the only character or actor on the show that's not African American. And to be invited into Tyler Perry Studios is an honor, I feel.
I bet.
Yeah.
I love that. You know, he's not defining who he is.
Yeah, I really liked that too. You know, well, I would have been fine playing the character if he was gay or straight or whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, we're actors and we're supposed to represent people, and that's the best part of our job. So I don't care what the character's sexual orientation is, but I thought it was cool that he made it more ambiguous. And I think a lot of people now, especially, are feeling that way, like about in their life and with the new generation and everything. And
I agree. Yeah. The new generation is completely different than mine. Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's really, yeah. They're out there. They're out there. They're just like blazing the trail. Yeah,
I wanted to read what Ed wrote. He said, "It is so great that their ethnicity isn't even mentioned, and that they are main characters interacting with legacy characters. That should not go unnoticed."
Absolutely. That's absolutely true. Yeah, like that it just was added seamlessly.
Yeah.
There was no talking about it. There was nothing like that. Yeah, and that's the best part, because that's how it is in real life.
Right. We all interact. Right.
Yeah. We don't think about it really.
Yeah. I wouldn't walk up to you, Alan, and be like, "So, are you Irish?" Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. Victoria, tell me about being cast as the performance capture and voice of Yara in The Last of Us Part 2. I mean, that's got to be, you know, people are playing this game around the world.
Yeah. It was a life-changing experience. I had never done mocap before at the time, but it was always something that I, of course, would be interested in doing. I'm actually a certified sword fighter.
That's amazing.
And I've been a dancer for years. So, you know, I knew about physicality. I was very up to doing the task. And I even got to do my own stunts, which was really, really cool. And I was introduced to all this new technology that I had no idea about before, which I have a newfound respect for all the people in the field now, developing that technology and working with it every day. And it was so much fun. I mean, that character, I feel I had a connection with her from the second I read her character description. So I feel like it was kind of meant to be.
Why are you a trained sword fighter? Where did that come into your world?
I mean, honestly, being an Asian actress in Hollywood, a lot of casting directors just expect you to know martial arts. That's a yeah, it's just it's a very Asian stereotype. And I have brothers who, you know, they're third degree black belts, but I never got into karate or taekwondo or anything like that when I was a young age. I had already started acting. So, I mean, I danced on the side, but I couldn't do much more than that because I was always working. But after coming out here and realizing that so many people expect you to know martial arts, just like they expect you to know how to do a Chinese accent or, you know, speak Taiwanese, like it's
Stereotyping.
It's true. And so I started taking these SOAR classes that my mom she found online. Again, go supportive parents. And it just stuck with me, and it made me feel stronger. So it unlocked a new passion, and yeah, I've been into it ever since.
Those boys in Salem better watch out.
Oh, heck yeah.
I would love to see you do some fighting and choreography on days.
Don't mess with her. Don't mess with her. Before I let you go, Remington, June, your daughter will turn 1. How has fatherhood changed your life?
Oh, it's definitely the most challenging thing I've ever done and the most incredibly rewarding thing. And everyone says that, and I didn't know what that means until you have a child. She personally doesn't sleep real well. We've done everything we can to mitigate the sleep, but some babies sleep better. I think some babies sleep worse.
You know,
and so that's been really challenging.
Actually, if you check up with the doctor, my family's doctor has always said that this very, very intelligent babies have a harder time sleeping.
Really?
Because that was my oldest brother. He's a lawyer. He's you know, he's an overachiever. He's been an overachiever all of his life. He had the most trouble sleeping out of all of us as a baby. He never went to sleep ever. And yeah, my parents took him to a doctor when he was little, and they were like, it's because he's so smart. His brain won't turn off.
Wow, I appreciate you saying that.
We'll all be going to Dr. Una Hoffman.
Yeah. Thank you for asking about her, though. Yeah, and no, I appreciate you saying that, Victoria. Yeah, I think she seems very aware of things. She's good at communicating. She's only 9 months. She's not walking, but she stands a lot, and she can walk if you carry her with her hands. And she's really has a great personality that's coming out. She smiles and laughs all the time. And yeah, I think
after we get off of this, you need to send me photos.
Yeah, I will.
I'm dying to see her.
Well, it is such a pleasure to meet you both. Thank you for taking time out of your day and sharing these stories with all of us.
Alan, this was a really, really wonderful meeting you. I'm so glad that you put this together. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome.
Have a wonderful time.
Stay in touch. Have a great afternoon.
Have a great one. Thank you so much.
You too. Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you to Remington and Victoria for spending time. Don't forget, Days of Our Lives streams on Peacock. Join me tomorrow afternoon when an As the World Turns alum and my friend Jamie Dudney joins me live here at 3 p.m. Eastern. If you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can do so down below. If you liked today's episode, click the like button. It helps me out. And turn on the notifications for reminders of all upcoming shows. And don't forget, you can stream The Locher Room on your favorite streaming platform. Just search The Locher Room. Have a great afternoon, everybody. And as always, stay safe.